So what are the things that folks should absolutely avoid in doing this type of work?
Yeah. So I think you had mentioned we had covered some of them, right? Overriding the client's needs, those types of things. I think some of the other things I noticed, one is definitely about your own stuff, right? Bringing
Yeah.
your own anxieties into it. And especially even your personal life. So, thinking about how many consultants do worry about the money and if they're being valued appropriately. And I think sometimes a lot of people will worry about that even after the contract is signed.
Yeah.
And that just always um, draws at me because or gnaws at me because you can see it happening in the back of their mind. They're not fully committed to giving the time to the client. It's like, well, you've already signed the contract. If later on you need to go back and reflect on, hey, what should you have done differently in contracting to make this more worth your time? That's fine. But you're committed at that point. Or if you want to go back and renegotiate or, rescope, that's fine too. But don't, letting that can end up creating organizational harm,
That's right.
right? And it's in your mind all the time. I think the one other thing I'll mention, I've noticed that I would really avoid is always feeling like you have to be the one to have the best idea in the room.
Yeah.
And I'll see that so much with consultants is they always feel like they have to, in a meeting, be the one to say the smart thing or have the idea that the client ends up using. It's okay. You don't always have to be the smartest person in the room to prove that you're worth your contract. A lot of times, what will happen, and this happened for me, is I would spend a lot of time being silent and really only recapping things when I felt like it was necessary. I really would try not to repeat what was already being said. And I would congratulate other people on their wisdom. Like if I thought they made a great point, I would say that's such a great point. And I would be taking notes on the side and later connecting dots. And that might actually bring more benefit to the client later on. So I think just focusing on, hey, this is my process, this is what I'm good at, and not trying to overcompensate again out of some feeling of lack of self worth. Another really great compliment I got once was that I held consistent energy throughout the
Yeah.
entire project. And they could always rely on me to bring that energy no matter what. And this was for a 19-month long project. So
Wow.
that's like
That takes a lot of energy to hold a space that long.
I actually like cried when I heard that feedback because I didn't realize that they noticed
Yeah.
that like that, and it was crazy because outside of that client, I definitely have my fluxes in energy. I was having fluxes in energy all over the place, but I knew this is my client. Like, this is my client space. And I think just going back to the bringing your anxieties or your stuff into the client space, just got to watch out for that. Because at the end of the day, that was one of the most valuable things for them is even if their energy flagged went up and down, they could always count on this resilience here on this side of the table. And that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't realize they noticed. It made me feel amazing, that they did.
Well, and it's value because not everybody can do it, right? So that's why it's such a huge compliment to get. But also, it doesn't often happen within companies and organizations because you have all this other stuff that is part of people's responses to things. So being that stable and stabilizing presence and energy and all of that is worth its weight in gold to the client. That's part of why they're bringing you in, which is why I'm so excited to hear that as an example of what's possible with this type of work.
And
So I actually want,
I definitely had to do stuff outside of that in order to keep that stability. And that's a lot of that noticing and reflection and, self-care
yeah,
really, because things were crazy. Of course, things are crazy in my life. Things are crazy in everyone's lives. And this was during the pandemic and it's still the pandemic. And
that's right.
it's not like this is like oh, I'm perfect Crystal. It's perfect Crystal 24/7. It's like, no, that took work to create that stable resilience. And that was, I thought, invisible to the client, happening on my own time. Meanwhile, it was noticed. So that's very,
Yeah.
that's very, very cool.
Well, and I think then the thing to avoid is assuming that it's automatic, because it sounds like as good as you are at it, and I've certainly had to do similar things, it takes effort. It takes reflection. So if you think that you're going to show up and just be the cool cucumber all the time, you're probably mistaken and you're going to leak. And so
100%.
you have to actually assume that that's likely, and then do something about it. I love that.